Hello again, this is Dr. Rhonda Gregory, and in this lesson we're talking about the importance of communication and of planning. The question that I asked each of our panel members to speak to was to imagine that they were speaking to their future replacement. What sort of advice would they offer to that person in terms of communication and planning at their institution, given the institutional culture?
I would have to say the three things that I've learned and that I try to pass on to people, new employees, new administrators, new people who are at the same level as I am, anything that I can connect with. Three things: be straightforward. Administrators really appreciate brevity. I mean, no one wants to see your 95-page report of the history of online education just to look at your request on page 93 about amending one tiny policy. So just be incredibly straightforward and be inclusive. I mean, planning doesn't happen in isolation. You need to use the strengths and experiences of others in your group, in your institution, just in your field of study too. Just reach out to whoever you can and include them in your conversations and decision-making processes. And the final thing is be patient. I mean, we're in academia. Things move sometimes incredibly slow. But that being said, that's not inactivity. It's just things that move slow because there are processes in place. So a new online program isn't going to be proposed, approved, created, and offered in a week. There are checks and balances with this, just like there is anything else, and people at the institution are required to follow them. So don't think because you have a need, and you tell someone about it and they don't answer you back or don't have something for you immediately or even within a day, that they've discussed or they've discarded you. I mean, you need to be patient and let kind of the process take its own course and work how it's going to work. And that's different for every institution.
I would have to think that patience and persistence are two things that come to mind. What I have found in my experience here in this role is that, of course, our online programming is driven by our faculty, right? And so the academic units are gonna be slow to respond because even though we've been doing this a really long time, there's still that prevailing notion out there that online education is still not as effective as traditional on-ground education. But again, I think with patience and persistence and working with the faculty teams and working with the academic units, the department chairs, et cetera, the light finally does come on. And when it does, you and your team have to just be ready to make it happen. So
first of all, the most important thing, you really need to work well with the faculty. You don't have to agree with everything that the faculty asks you, but you have to be fair. And I like to establish guidelines so everybody, all the faculty, follow exactly the same guidelines. When I first started this job a few years ago, my first thing is to develop a handbook, a distance education handbook that we put all the policies, what we expect from the faculty, developing courses, teaching courses, what their responsibilities when they're developing and teaching a course, an online course. So establishing clear guidelines and policies about online teaching. So I think that's my way to be fair and consistent throughout the development process and the teaching process. I think it's important to listen to what the faculty has to say. We must evaluate best practices before designing our policies. Building a strong partnership with the faculty to assure buy-in into the program and in the success of the program.
That you need to be equipped at all times to explain how your department services are assisting the institution in meeting their strategic goals. So I cannot stress that point enough. So you need to have evidence in the form of metrics which directly show how your department's role is moving strategic benchmarks forward. So communication is something my department and my personnel take very seriously. We not only leverage our institution's communication channels to talk about services and metrics of our department. We write up a monthly newsletter to share information about our department and services as well. And we make that newsletter archive available on our website. And also, it's really important for me that my direct reports or my team know that they have a critical role in communication. So when they are leading their own projects or they're overseeing their own initiatives in my department, one of the necessary and critical functions on every project is how are we going to communicate whether this training is effective, how many people are coming to our training, how many found it useful, what things need to change. And so all those things we try to find a way to communicate on a regular basis to our community, our academic community. And then in talking to my future replacement about planning, I would say that interdepartmental collaborations at my institution at APSU are very helpful and fruitful. And I've noticed that having collaborations or partnerships with multiple institutional offices helps us find faculty and support for student success measures. So not only that, but when more than one office is involved in promoting a specific initiative, these initiatives tend to have staying power. And so because they tend to have staying power, there's more of a lasting impact that you can make on the institution.
I think when I say this to my staff, I would say this to someone that would be sitting in this chair in the future. The root to every single problem, and you can't put your finger on one that this is not, communication is always an issue. It's either the sole reason for the problem or it is a supplemental reason for the problem. So good communication is imperative. You cannot make decisions in a vacuum. What's good for natural science, boy, that's a great conversation I've had with them. And boy, we're rolling with it. That may not work for my folks that are teaching music in the humanities division. So you've got to make sure that you're not only looking at that individual need, but you've got to make sure that what does the larger picture look like? And then most importantly, we cannot forget what's at the end of all of this. As a faculty member, as an administrator, as a course designer, as someone that's in charge of the LMS, someone that's in charge of the tutoring lab, at the end of all this work lies the student. And so we need to make sure that we're cognizant at all times of how each decision that we make, how does it affect that student? Again, I kind of come back to what we talked about in question 2 or 3 about faculty support. If I support that faculty well, I know that I'm going to be supporting that student. And again, I think those things are very, very closely hinged together in what's there. So I think the greatest bit of advice is, I would say, be a careful listener and a brilliant communicator. And so I think if you'll be a careful listener, it'll be easy to be a brilliant communicator because you've listened to what folks have said and you've heard what they've said, and then you've been able to put into action some things and be able to communicate that in a way that's effective across, whether it be the student rank, faculty rank, administration rank, whatever rank, across your institution.